Hello and welcome to another jungle video, and in this one we are going to be having a look at the lost junglers. We've had a lot of serious and complex tutorials recently, a lot of jungle knowledge, but you know, we forget that you need jungle champions to actually enact on that knowledge. And in this video I'm going to go over a lot of the great champions we've had in the jungle that have been forced out of it, the junglers that Riot just simply didn't want you to play. Should be a fun little discussion and an interesting look at why people simply don't enjoy playing the jungle as much as they have done. So as always, if you like these more opinionated pieces, you know, just a little bit of jungle champion knowledge, please let me know in the comments, and of course like and subscribe if you do enjoy it. Don't forget to head to the gameplay channel for in-depth analysis on all your favorite champions. The coaching link is in the description as well, and now without hesitation, let us commence. And really with this, I just want to start a conversation. The problem is with things like Taliyah, Riot just forgot she existed for the longest period of time until that recent buff at the end of last year. Volibear the same thing now. Volibear almost had the same exact thing happen. He was such a great jungle last year, they took away the healing on the W while clearing, they took away the movement speed. This forced junglers to max Q in order to actually be able to gank anything, but then you lost the W amplification for farming and fighting, and we still didn't have that heal back. And he basically became a top laner. He was used so little in the jungle, even the client didn't recommend it in Champion Select. However, yes, eventually they did get their buffs, they're back in the jungle, but what champions did not get so lucky? The first one we have to talk about is Sett. Last year we had these new age junglers, Volibear and Sett dominating pro play, high elo. People loved the fact that it was a tank meta for jungling, but we weren't seeing Sejuani and Zac because, you know, we had 3 years of that. The problem is when something becomes really strong in the jungle, it very often becomes a flex pick, and Riot basically has to decide which role do they balance around, and if the verbal abuse we get from game to game wasn't enough, they often choose not to enable the jungle. Sett was a prime example of this. You would basically buff Grump and then turbo gank every single lane. In Korea, they would rough the Swifty boots and just simply keep on doing it. Yes, jungle experience was still, you know, very focused on farming and scaling, but if you could get ahead with Sett, you really didn't need much more than Cinderhulk, Swifties, you get a Deadman's and maybe a Spirit Visage. All of a sudden, you're so fast that his pecs are almost smacking him in the head as he runs around the map. Your ult as a disengage or engage was just supremely useful in all aspects of play, and because you could do it on a budget, and the fact that you had high base damage and your pit grit passive was total AD, not bonus AD, basically meant, hey, I'm tanky, I'm fast, and I do a decent amount of damage. First, Riot came in 10.16 with the base damage nerf because that's what you do to tanks who do damage. They must be tanky but not do damage. You know, fortunately, we just kept going because we wanted to, and then Riot said, you know what? No, bad junglers, you're not allowed to have fun with new age tanks in the jungle. Nerf Volibear, get him out of here. And for Sett 10.18, we're gonna make that total AD and shift around your damage profile so you have to actually build it. And because his clear really wasn't that great in the first place and now you needed gold to do damage, he just became so much better in a solo lane, and thus it has remained. We still see the odd Sett support, which is where he was flexed as well, but I'm not going to lie, it would be really nice to see some kind of monster exception that actually lets you still jungle the champion. It was really fun to have this kind of fighter in the jungle, and the character model is kind of fun to look at, you know, like Kai'Sa. Next up we have Qiyana. Now, she has her own issues. Of course, she was just buffed, and we talked about this in a best junglers. When you buff base damage, that always buffs roles that don't have a lot of income and basically gives you some free stats. The thing is, she was really so strong in the jungle, and it makes sense because of her form switching. She has camouflage up what feels like every second. She can fight anyone 1v1. Her ganks because of this were insanely strong. Think Viego, but you know, even better. She has a literal stun. She has that ult which, you know, nails you to a wall if you even exist remotely close to one. And because of that, was able to be the alpha queen of the jungle, which makes sense considering where she's from in the lore. Except Riot said, you know what? We don't like that you're top of the meta, we don't like that you could snowball and assassinate anyone, and instead of actually doing something that might enable her in the role, they directly hit her in the jungle in 10.2, removing that passive attack speed on the W from 20% flat to 5 through 25 scaling. This basically meant rip clear speed, and you've seen with the Taliyah and the Volibear changes, sometimes just giving someone a faster and healthier jungle clear enables them to use their strengths against other champions more frequently, which means, you know, you actually can play the game. Unfortunately, they said no. Next up, we have Sylas, and I remember midway through Season 9 really picked up steam in the jungle. He was basically like the ultra 3-way flex pick between solo lanes and jungle. And through quite the many changes he's had since he was released, A lot of it has been about his damage, his healing, his tankiness, the fact that you could build almost like AP, Bruiser, Echo, Sylas kind of hybrids. Riot has struggled to keep this champion sort of in this great place of being good in the solo lanes as well as the jungle, and tended to always make him go back into the mid lane. The latest attack speed buff to his passive certainly does help, but way back in 9.16, the Chain Lash detonation now does 45% reduced damage to monsters. They also removed the shield when you hit a monster originally back in 9.14, and then in 10.1 they made that damage profile go from 45% to 60, but really, he has never really fully recovered in the jungle. Obviously, at the end of Season 9, you could still kinda pull it off. Beginning of Season 10, we were still seeing people use it, level 2 cheeses, using his PvP component, you sorted Twitch rivals. The problem is, once people figured out the jungle meta, you know, farming fast, farming often, sequencing your camps, looping them tier 1, 2, 3, 4, scaling nicely into the late game, a champion that relied on ganks and pressure, which are high risk, really didn't cut it, and basically, he's just not really survived whatsoever. Even now, 41% win rate doesn't work in the current iteration of the jungle. The only way he could foreseeably come back is with some kind of damage assistance that doesn't affect lanes, much like with Volibear and other champions as such. Regardless, pro players such as Yankos have always come out and said, we love playing Qiyana, we love playing Sylas, and it really sucks that Riot make changes that don't allow them to thrive in that position as well as solo lanes. Now, the curious one for me is Pantheon, because they reworked Pantheon, originally a jungler. Yeah, you could take him mid, yeah, you could take him top lane, yes, you could take him support. He's always been a 4-way flex pick. When he was first reworked, yes, you could use him in the jungle. I even made a video about it. The experience scaling jungle meta isn't kind to a lot of champions like this, almost exactly in the same kind of way as Sylas. The problem is, overall in World's End of 2019, Season 9, he was so intensely pick banned at 100% almost, that Riot really had to just straight up nerf him. And then he just became an OP support because you needed to have a low budget, and it forced Riot, after basically a season of this, to shift him back into some kind of solo lane carry position, which they did, and, you know, thusly became very OP. That armor penetration in the ultimate, that was very strong and really helped for your scaling, and all of a sudden your jungle is once again using a fun champion with a global ultimate. Really nice to be able to get anywhere on the map with this. We saw Yankos streaming it as well with some obscene damage and survivability and healing. And honestly, it was just really fun having something proactive and aggressive that had that map mobility versus a very heavy farm and scaling meta. I mean, we're just watching Karthus, Hecarim, Graves, you know, farm for a year. This has not been fun. So when we get these windows of Volibear, Sett, Sylas, Pantheon, Qiyana, it really opens things up and makes it fun for the role again before they get removed. And they said in the patch notes 11.3, very recent fresh wounds, that they wanted to balance him in the jungle. What they did isn't really balancing, it's kneecap removal off of those perfect thighs. Damage reduced by 30% against monsters was enough, but then they increased the cooldown of the Comet Spear as well. When you remove damage to monsters and add 3 seconds to a level 1 rank, yeah, that's a recipe for a lot of pain in the jungle, and as such his win rate is now abysmal. Another glorious champion, fun to play, different from the meta, removed. Hey, I fully understand that flex picks and pro play can become an issue, but there's 99.999% of us that just want to play our champions in our roles. And honestly, G2 have shown us that flex picks can be really fun in drafts in pro play as well. I'm sure there's other ways we can get things back into jungle and reduce their solo power. And on that note, Aatrox was an absolute glorious rework, you know, once they got him down to more the old kind of champion hybrid with the new one. Say what you will about that. The point was, you could flex him into the jungle very heavily. In fact, way back in 2019, I did a video on Canyon and Solo Queue, who I love scouting, watching, and learning from, and decided, you know what, this Canyon dude, he's pretty good. So I'm gonna make a video about him and his glorious Aatrox jungle. And really, it was fun. Max Slaw used to play it a lot as well, and you know, you've had Selfmade pull it out this patch even. It does show up every now and again. It's not horrible, but there's been a lot of changes to jungle experience, atomization, the meta that really don't make it work that well. But in 9.12, they changed his cooldown of his passive from 15 seconds to 24 to 12. And that of course is our sustain, that's some extra damage. And anything in the jungle that gives you sustain and extra damage and it's removed, makes healthy and fast clearing almost impossible compared to before. Again, he really wasn't directly noted as we're taking him out of the jungle in the patch notes like Qiyana, like Pantheon. But what's most sad for me is when I started playing the game end of 2013 Season 3, the original Fnatic Cyanide loved to break out Aatrox on the world stage. I said, hey, that looks cool and fun, I'm gonna do that. And so I did. It's just weird that what was, a top laner and jungle hybrid really has never been accentuated as such. It's just been really focused on solo laning, much like the Pantheon. Yeah, he's going support and he's gone jungle periodically, but it honestly feels a little bad there isn't some kind of direct Aatrox support in the jungle, because I think his kit and the way he works could bring some really nice fighter level stuff to the jungle. Great to fight in rivers over crab with something with CC, he can remove the shield. I don't know, it could be a pretty simple change to make his clear faster and healthier, and all of a sudden Aatrox jungle could actually be a thing again. Finally, as a bonus round, we have here Kai'Sa and Ezreal. Now, Ezreal got a world skin for being a jungler. Taliyah got a world skin for being a mid laner. And now Ezreal cannot jungle and Taliyah cannot mid lane. But in terms of jungle marksman, we really haven't had a lot of success. Yes, we have Graves and Kindred as the core, and Twitch is your supreme cheese, even if that's not doing so well at the moment. Having Kai'Sa and Ezreal in this role, even if it was for a short time, was actually quite refreshing and fun. Now, as you know on this channel, and if you watched me in Season 8, you would know I played a lot of Kai'Sa jungle, and it was in a lot of videos. The level 2 meta from Crab kinda made that really difficult at times, but honestly, the hybrid build with Hextech Gunblade, the Lifesteal and Death's Dance, as well as Gunblade also, good times. But then Riot said, you know what, we're gonna nerf that interaction. Missile damage is now flagged as an AoE in all cases, and the missiles you fire, 12 to 10. That was 8.9, and basically from there, every single change they made to Kai'Sa removed her carry potential, removed her ability to clear, but because of the changes to the AP passives, you still had Nash's Tooth builds and what have you. However, in 9.18, that bonus attack speed being reduced on the E, that pretty much killed it. I mean, this is almost a year late and it really wasn't good in Season 9 at all, but if there was hope of it working, it was pretty much dead at that point. Again, not something that was really endorsed or supported by Riot, but people like Tarzan also played it in solo queue. I played it in solo queue. There's a few niche cases. It was really fun. Nice to have a marksman from the role. It just wasn't fully supported, and every nerf that came through just made it worse and worse, even if she was okay in the bottom lane. It would be really great to have some interaction with jungle damage from Kai'Sa, just to bring her back from that role. I mean, you have a lot of downside to picking a marksman in the jungle, but in her case, just pure damage and scaling could be fun. And yeah, so Ezreal wasn't really sort of something fun to face. I shouldn't actually say that. In 7.15, they buffed him with a Mystic Shot cooldown. Of course, it gave you cooldown on all your abilities every time it hit something. Then they increased the AD ratio, and they buffed a few other things, and all of a sudden you've got someone who stacks his attack speed passive, farming in the jungle with reduced cooldowns. With Stormrazor's Surge made it almost impossible to 1v1 him. He farmed quickly, he farmed healthy, he maintained the passive procs, he had great itemization in the warrior. He had Red Smite from Skirmisher's Saber, and this was an absolute nightmare to face in solo queue. It took over completely, and you saw it on the world stage as well, which is why it got a world skin. Now, the point of me mentioning this is because the nerfs came hard and heavy. They removed the damage, and they almost halved his attack speed growth. That, and we also got new runes, which basically removed him from the role. And you know what? That's not so bad, because every time we have a nice thing in League, Ezreal abuses it, and it gets nerfed. Anyone remember the Spectral Wraith mid lane jungle item Ezreal? Then you know what I mean. The whole point of the Ezreal thing isn't that I want him back in the jungle. I don't. This champion's an abomination. But it's things like Kai'Sa that could have actually done it. It's things like that that would enable us to have a bit more variety in the meta, in our champion pools, from the reworks of new champions. Flex picks are really exciting for the game, and I enjoy it when great champions with great design are able to be used in the jungle instead of forcing us to always go back to things that have been around for 10 years. Lee Sin, Elise, Jarvan, Hecarim, Graves, Kha'Zix, and so on. The Volibear rework and the Fiddlesticks rework were great steps in the right direction for jungle. I just think jungle would be way more popular if some of these really great reworks and new champs came through and actually had a little bit of viability in the role. But there you have it, a nice recap on the junglers Riot doesn't want you to play. Hope you enjoyed a little run down memory lane. Sometimes it's fun to make these kind of different videos, not a core tutorial, just a discussion on what we use to actually enable our big brain strategies on the game. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and maybe learned something historical. Please like, share, and comment if you did. Consider subscribing if you think the content is worthy. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.